Hey everybody, it's the Van Show, and today we're talking to my friend Holly Black. Say hi, Holly.
Hi.
Hi. Awesome. So Holly, we're so excited to have you on the show.
I'm so excited to be here. Thank you for having me.
You were saying that this is your first puppet interview, is that right?
That is correct. I've never been interviewed by a puppet before.
You'd be surprised how many times we hear that. Dun-dun-ch. All right. So Holly, we want to ask you a few questions. First of all, tell us where you're from.
I am from Massachusetts. That's where I'm living now. I was born in New Jersey. East Coast.
So you like the New England area?
Yes.
Well, then you're an author. How long ago did you start writing?
I always wrote when I was, from the time that I could. I liked making up stories, and I loved reading books. And so I think the natural outgrowth of reading books is at some point you're like, well, I would like to maybe tell some stories that aren't in these books that I have. But I think I probably became serious about it in my 20s.
Yeah?
When I tried to write my first book.
And so when you came to that moment where you're like, I'm going to do it. I'm going to write a book, and I'm going to make money doing it.
Uh-huh.
What did that feel like, and what was your life at that point?
Let's see. I was a production editor on medical journals. So
I was
kind of
in the publishing field.
I was kind of in the publishing field. I had wanted to get a job in publishing, and this is the job I had gotten. So I was like sizing art and checking over copy editing for like the Journal of Hand Surgery.
Ooh.
And and I was
read.
commuting to the city, and I was trying to figure out how to write a book for the first time, and I knew a lot of people growing up who loved art and who did art. My mom was a painter. I knew people who were in bands, but I never knew anyone who'd ever made any actual money from the doing of art. And I had no reason to think that I would be the one to do that. And so I think what I felt was a lot of fear and, some degree of despair. and I always tell people that, we tell kids that if you believe in yourself, you can do it. I didn't believe in myself. There was no world in which I believed in myself. And, I always say, like, you don't have to believe in it's okay. Because I remember getting that advice and thinking, oh no, oh, this is bad. Because I don't know. It's all you have to do is do the work. You have to just keep doing the work. You have to do it every day, even if you don't believe it'll ever happen, even if nothing seems likely or possible.
You brought some books with you today.
I did.
Now, can you tell us a little bit about, let's see, you've got The Cruel Prince. That's the newest one, right?
So The Cruel Prince, came out in January of this past year. And next to it, I have the sequel, which is right now just an ARC, which is an advanced reading copy. And it comes out this January, so January 2019. And I have with me a copy of one of the Magisterium books because the last one, Magisterium 5, The Golden Tower, comes out September 11th. So really, really soon. It was the final end to the series.
So before we get into the what's in these books, how do you pump these out so fast? That's a lot of books all at once. Like, I'm impressed.
Well, the Magisterium series I've been doing with my friend Cassandra Clare, and it's different to write a book with someone. It's definitely faster for me, and it's just a very different process. Whereas these books, they take I can probably write about a book and a half a year, maybe, in a good year.
That's a lot.
It is a lot.
Some people spend 5 years on their first novel, and it's only halfway done, and...
I spent 5 years on my first novel,
yeah.
So I know. But that I think a lot of the times when you're writing your first book, you're trying to figure out everything at once. You're trying to figure out pacing, you're trying to figure out characterization, you're trying to figure out what a book is, what it's supposed to feel like, what it's supposed to be shaped like. And it gets easier the more you do it. The more, it gets easier and sometimes harder in other ways, but it gets easier. Okay, so many years ago now, maybe 10 years ago, I started doing a New Year's party. And I started doing New Year's party because when I was a kid, I watched all of these movies in which people dressed up for New Year's and drank champagne. And then as an adult, I realized people don't really do that. Like, I don't know where does anyone go to do that? And so I decided I would be the place people could go to do that. So
Wow.
we started having kind of dress up like fancy New Year's parties. And then because I always went to World Fantasy over Halloween, I got interested in the idea of doing themed New Year's parties. And so we did like Prohibition New Year's, and we did Fairy Tale New Year's, and we did Vampire New Year's, and we did 80s Prom New Year's, and
Wow.
it was they were all good.
And you got a bunch of friends that all get into it and dress up and
They
get
do.
excited.
Like, I think that, it wouldn't work if I didn't have friends who were super game and who were willing to really every year bring it in fabulous ways.
That's amazing. So which one was your favorite?
Probably Fairy Tale New Year's. Everybody looked fabulous in pointed ears. They looked so good.
Now, can you tell us what was it like doing an anthology? Like, did you get tons and tons of submissions and you had to go through and pick what the best stories were? Or was that already done before you got there? I'm not sure how that works.
Well, in the case of Zombies versus Unicorns, we went over a list of people we were going to ask to write stories with our editor once we sold the project. So we sold the project with the commitment of a couple of people we knew. And then the editor who had acquired it said, here are some people, because it's a lot to write a story themed that specifically. And so you really want to be able to go out to people and say, listen, we'd really like a story from you. Do you think you could do it? And so that's what we did. And so we had the stories come in and then we edited them. And I do think that that's really fun. For me as a writer, I'm interested in working with other people on stories. It's something I like to do. It's something, my friends and I do anyway. We work on each other's stories and, give each other feedback. And so it was nice to have that role rather than writing a story. And I didn't write a story for Zombies versus Unicorns.
But
just
you
worked in that
had your hand
capacity.
in all the others,
Yeah.
all the stories as an
Yeah.
editor.
Yeah, and I wrote with Justine the debates
Oh yes.
that went back and forth, extolling the virtues of the unicorn over the zombie, which is not hard, friends.
Not at all.
Zombies, they smell. Yeah, I think that writing about teenagers is interesting because you are in a place as a teenager where you are making big decisions about the rest of your life, but you're not always aware of how big they are. You're setting off in a direction, and that direction is often, something you don't necessarily take the significance of. When you're deciding, where am I going to go to school? Am I going to go to school? Who are my friends? And also, you're doing a lot of things for the first time. And I think that intensity is really interesting, the intensity of having to figure out, firsts. I worry about doing something I worry about inauthenticity, and it is hard because I think the best thing I can do is pull back a little from trying too hard and try to think about sort of the universality of the experience of being young, what it was like to be young in terms of like the stuff I really got up to. And then, pay enough attention to the world to sort of see where people are and what kind of, conversations they're having and what they're doing, like whether they all have cell phones, what kind of expectations they have about going out and where they're going and how sort of culture has changed in terms of like house parties and, do people do that anymore and in what way? And I think that's the stuff I try and pay attention to rather than specifically minute to minute like slang, which I think would be a terrible idea for me and probably for my readers for me to try to adapt. I've always preferred writing novels. I wrote my first novel that made sense before I ever actually finished a short story that made sense. I didn't understand plot, and only when I saw it actually in novel form was I able to finish a short story and understand like what endings were. And for me, short fiction has been, I think, more of a challenge, but I think that also short fiction is liberating in certain ways because you can try on stuff in a way that I never would in long form. I can write something that I don't know if I would like writing long. I can write, space opera, or I can write, an experimental ghoul story that I've been thinking about, but I'm not sure that I really want to commit to.
Holly, this has been excellent. I'm so excited that you came on the show to talk to us. We've got one last thing to do before we go. Would you like to say goodbye with me?
I would love to.
Okay, we're going to lean in,
Okay.
and we're going to look at the camera,
Okay.
and we're going to say goodbye together.
All right.
Okay.
Which camera?
The one right ahead.
Okay.
Here we go. Ready?
Okay.
1, 2, 3. Goodbye!
Goodbye!